Hello, my name's Dr. No. Welcome to We Pyramid Dons TV. This is my first YouTube post and it's called Superhumans. I really got the concept for Superhumans from the Paralympic Games slogan, and I'll get into that in a minute, but first I'd like to reference Kanye West. Kanye West, in his latest album, Ye, on the song Yikes, disclosed his mental health condition, bipolar, and referred to it as a superpower. Now, for me, in him referring to his bipolar disorder as a superpower, I had a problem with that. I felt that it was an inaccurate way to describe bipolar as well as other mental health issues. And my problem with it is that to call mental illness a superpower suggests that what you have is something which enhances you, something which adds something to you, or something which puts you ahead of other people, whereas mental illness does not. It subtracts, if we're going to use mathematical terms. It is a negative. It is a zero sum total or a sub-zero sum total. That is, it subtracts from. It takes you away from reality, and it reduces your or takes away your ability to be able to maneuver within reality, or to be able to recognize reality, or to be able to have a stable mindset, personality, in which you can cope with reality, and to really have your senses sharp in the way that people who have a balanced mind have sharp senses. So really, mental health, bipolar, doesn't. It is a deficit. It creates extreme highs, extreme lows, and there are other complexities in relation to bipolar. But in terms of other mental illnesses, it is a negative. It is a zero sum total. Delusions are false beliefs. They are a negative because they don't really exist or are not relative to reality. So are illusions and so are hallucinations. So really, in mathematical terms, I would like to really just reference mental illness in terms of it being a disability, something which subtracts from rather than enhances. An enhancement is really what I would say is the definition of a superpower or an enhanced human being. That's mental illness. But what I would like to say in relation to mental illness is that, and this is where I feel that Kanye has gone wrong, is that mental illness and those people who have a mental illness and those people that have to cope with mental illness on a day-to-day basis, those who are able to work hard to transcend and overcome the disability that they have, that is something that is there which stops them from being fully able, in the cognitive functions of their brain, or their brains being able to function, and needing medication, needing counselling, needing whatever it is they need to have in order to get themselves back to a state of reality and back to a healthy mindset. Those people who fight the negative forces that are pushing them away from reality, and overcome the negative forces in order to get back on an even keel, to get back to a healthy mindset where their minds are stable and where they're able to dispel the delusions or the illusions or the hallucinations, depending on the severity of the illness. That takes a superhuman effort. And that is really what this post is about. It's about people day in, day out, people perceived as ordinary people across the globe having to put in a superhuman effort. And I think that those who have to deal with and cope with mental illness on a day-to-day basis have to put in a superhuman effort in order to navigate their way through reality, in order to deal with reality, and in order to transcend the barriers that mental illness puts in their way. And there should be no doubt that that requires a superhuman effort there. So that's really what I would say about mental illness, and that is what I would really say in correcting Kanye West, who refers to his bipolar and mental illness in terms of being a superpower. I think he's made a gross error there, and really I don't think he's really thinking straight when he refers to that there. So moving on from a mental illness, I'd like to really move on to discuss where it came from, which is the Paralympics. You can also the Invictus Games. For those Paralympians who, perform in, the various genres of sport and physical endeavour there, but who also have disabilities. Those who have, a loss of limb, loss of arm, loss of leg, maybe loss of sight, the varying disabilities that are there. I would say that the ability to mentally get yourself into the game, maybe the depression that one might feel and the negative mental effects that disabilities have, to get your mind in the game, first of all, to say that you're going to do that sport and to do the training and to get yourself up every morning. I think that is a superhuman thing straight off the bat, let alone the physical exertion and the extra physical exertion that is required to do what people who are able-bodied can do with less effort and less strain on their bodies physically and mentally on their mind. So I think that the slogan superhuman in relation to the Paralympic Games and say the Invictus Games, I think is bang on the money really. I think that is absolutely right, and I love that slogan, and I think they got it absolutely right with that. So that was where I got the superhuman thing from, the idea. And obviously I'm just rolling that out to cover other areas of life. So I'd now like to move on to women in relation to my superhuman post, and refer specifically to the MeToo movement to start us off. You have Tarana Burke, who started the MeToo movement in 2006. She's a survivor of sexual violence, and was raped at 6 years old, molested, and then raped again as an adult. She stated that violence is violence, trauma is trauma, and we are taught to downplay it, even to think of it as child's play, which is awful. And I think that that's really quite a true statement, that within a male-dominated patriarchal society, which is quintessential of Western society, women are, really taught to downplay the sexual misconduct or the transgressions of men, that transgress the boundaries that should be there in terms of a woman's body, sexual harassment and what goes on there. So that really makes perfect sense. Moving on, it was Alyssa Milano, who tweeted the hashtag MeToo in 2017, following on from the Harvey Weinstein sexual misconduct allegations. And again that's where it took off with the hashtag MeToo. And really, Harvey Weinstein was somebody who was powerful, who was in a position of extreme power, and it was really seen that he was the person who made or destroyed, people's careers, but women in particular. And there was a joke at the Oscars on an occasion that in the wake of the misconduct by Weinstein, that women didn't need to pretend to be attracted to him anymore, which really says quite a lot, that women would have to pretend to be attracted to him, flirt with him, and go along with his misogynistic nonsense in order to get a job or keep a job, or to be able to remain within Hollywood society as a credible actress, which is awful, there. So the Me Too movement really speaks about that, and it speaks to the superhuman, level of really of motivation, of ability, of mind, spirit, and the body of women to be able to really get on, and what is required of them to be able to get on within Hollywood and elsewhere. Later on in 2018, we had Oprah Winfrey at the Golden Globes, who created the slogan, or who mentioned the slogan, "Your time is up," referring to men, who abuse women and abuse their power. Really, that their time is up. That really, from the Me Too movement, starting in 2006. Then 2017, the Harvey Weinstein, now 2018, really, that your time is up. So the movement has gathered pace. But really, in reference to that, I would just like to say, really, that, there is a superhuman effort, made by women in order to transcend the barriers that a patriarchal, male-dominated society puts up for women to be able to achieve, to be seen as equal, to get equal pay, to be able to enter into domains considered only the domain as men, and to be able to be perceived as credible in and of their own right, based on their skills, based on the character of the person, based on their abilities, and not to be able to get to positions where they're succeeding by, really being trinkets, or really, ornaments of no value to men, on men's arms, or doing favours for men, or playing the role of a subservient, to be at the disposal of men, really there. So I think that there's a superhuman effort there, especially in the black community as well, with single parent mothers that need to struggle, who are at a deficit, who exist in ghetto conditions, who have to raise children there, through the lack of fatherhood there. Of course, these complexities, coming from black inequality and historical inequalities there. So there's that as well. But women, really, it's a shout out to them that really, a lot of them are superhumans who have to cope within the patriarchal, male-dominated terrain in order to get ahead, and in order to be seen as equal, and in order to be celebrated and seen as equal to men in whatever it is that they pursue. So I'd like to move on now to black people, or to Africans, or African people, or people of African origin, which encompasses all black people. All black people are of African origin. And really, this superhuman effort that African people, or people of African origin, have had to put in. The beastly treatment of Africans on the African continent, the destruction of their economy, the destruction of their worldview, the destruction of their ontological and epistemological realities. That is the way that they are, their unique consciousness. That is the unique relationship that they have with the universe, and the way in which they can know their universe has been destroyed. And these are the origins of the African superstructure, everything that follows: religion, education, family, society. All things come from being and knowing the universe. That is the origin of all culture. And that has been destroyed on the African continent, particularly because of the situation of diaspora, where Africans have been enslaved, and have been shipped from Africa across to the Caribbean, to the Americas. Distance from family, distance from the equator of their culture, which is Africa, and the superhuman effort of the Middle Passage, crammed in, padlocked, shackled together, having to cope in a situation which, is beastly, having to keep morale up, having to make sense of this form of gross inhumanity, which is at opposites with everything African. Because African culture is humanity. It puts human life above all else, above materialism, above objects, above economy, above all of these things. So to be in a situation where you're dealing with European capitalism and the inhumanity and the complete disregard for human life, which is the complete opposite of African culture and African consciousness, is beastly. So the superhuman effort to come to terms with this beastly, criminal situation there, the inhumanity of it, the depth of the inhumanity of it has required a superhuman effort. To travel across the Middle Passage, which some didn't, some drowned themselves, jumped overboard because they couldn't cope with it mentally, physically. Some died because of the lack of food, because of the illness that struck whilst being shackled, and also survived those who survived coping as slaves, and the extreme levels of work, the work ethic that had to be there, under the burning sun, the extreme work rate that was there, that they were forced into having to do, and surviving the slave plantations, the beastly work rate that had to be there, suffering the abuse, the whippings, your name being taken away, the humiliation, the relegation of yourself to a subhuman animal entity, where your African consciousness is of no value, and you now need to reorientate yourself to European norms of thinking and being, which is an impossible task. Ones which hasn't been asked of Europeans, to have to shift their brains to thinking in an African way of being dominated by an alternate way of being. This has been asked of Africans, and of Africans very uniquely and only really in world history, to have to shift their way of thinking and their way of being to a European way of having to do that, losing their culture almost entirely and having to really exist within a European environment, and having to deal with the depression of that, having to deal with the mental illness of depression and that situation there, and having to cope with that. This is superhuman levels. So to come from that to black people entering into American society, dealing with the Jim Crow situation, dealing with the police brutality, also black people in the UK needing to deal with institutional police racism, the racism at the hands of the British people, when they came from the Windrush, having to deal with raising up from a structurally excluded from the mainstream society, excluded from work, excluded from education, excluded from all of these things, and excluded culturally, having to dump their African, what is left, the remnants of African ways of being and knowing, and having to toss that in the bin at the behest of their new British or European reality, in order to get on. It's a superhuman thing that they've had to do, black people have had to do, to transcend the boundaries of their environment. And where we are today is just unbelievable, to have created something out of nothing, especially in America, through various things, through the creation of hip-hop music, through rap, through our own brand of things, to get on, to study, to get on and to move through the barriers, to reach the upper echelons of European society, of American society, of British society, and to be at the situation now through the strength of all of that, having begun on the African continent to where we are now in a situation of diaspora, is nothing short of miraculous. If you asked any other people to have gone through that, who knows what the result of that might be? But Africans, it is a very unique situation. that has been asked of Africans. The complete destruction of the culture, the slave trade which destroyed the culture systemically there, and to emerge out of that. I just think it's absolutely, when you look at it, it is nothing short of miraculous, and truly superhuman. Finally, on this superhuman post, I come to the LGBT community. And I think that really, again, there is a superhuman effort needing to be made by those across the LGBT spectrum of sexual orientation, that really, the chemical equations that this group of people are having to wrestle with, the chemical equations that do not fit within conventional societal norms, having to really deal with society who has obviously conventional norms demarcated for you, and wrestling with these chemical equations of the brain, really, which I can't imagine, is going to have to be something to, I would imagine, is something to overcome, to have to overcome the demarcated, roles that society demarcates and asks you to fit inside, and to have to wrestle for your freedom of expression, to love who you love, and to simply live a full life, a full, satisfied life, having loved who you wanted to love and having to be who it is that you want to be. Really, that fight, which I've observed, requires a superhuman effort to be able to fight for that freedom and to be able to, be who you want to be, and to be able to deal with that mentally, the depression that I'm sure will come from having to wrestle with that, the exclusion, all of the nasty little things, the looks of disapproval, the sniggers, the whispering when you enter a room, or the laughter, people laughing or trying to, all of the little things that people do to make one feel uncomfortable, all of these little nuances that, all of these nasty little nuances that are thrown in to make one uncomfortable, and the depression that comes with that, and the humiliation that might come at that, and the sadness that comes with that, and to have to cope with that, and to stick to your guns, and to know that deep within that you have to be who you want to be, and that you need to live a full life just like anybody else, and to be happy. Everybody has the right to be happy. So again, I think that there is a superhuman effort there in order to be who it is you need to be, you want to be, and to have freedom, freedom, and to attain freedom requires a superhuman effort. Requires a superhuman effort across the spectrum of human experience, of human life. Again, a shout out to the LGBT community and the superhumans that exist within that spectrum of human being. So that's the LGBT superhumans. Salute to all of the superhumans that I've mentioned in this post. Apologies for any superhumans that I've left out. There are other ethnic minorities and other people that I could have mentioned, but I wanted to stick to the areas and to the people that I felt deserved my immediate attention. And if there is the request for it, I can cover other areas later on, so do accept my apologies on that. So please do feel free to use the hashtag superhuman in your tweets or in whatever you do. Really, if you're talking or writing on behalf of people that you feel deserve the superhuman title, and let's try and just spread this mindset of celebrating and looking out for people who deserve our support as superhumans who have got life a little bit tougher than the rest of us. So if you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much.